Okay, in today's video, I'm going to actually talk about what I've personally seen web developers do to just absolutely destroy businesses. And I don't really, and this isn't hyperbole, I mean literally destroy. To you web developers out there, you know, I guess I don't mean to give you a hard time, but really, some of you guys need to wake up. More often than not, and this is, I'll put 95% of the blame on the clients out there, are I guess not hiring the right people for the right things. It's most, I will say, the client's fault because they don't know about what they don't know, therefore they don't invest enough in the process of doing web. And when I'm saying web development, I'm mainly talking about maintaining a website, but also new design, to where they put too much restrictions on you. You only have so much time in the day. Therefore, some of you might actually focus on clients who, you know, basically fall into the category of the ones who get their businesses destroyed. So, and you cater to that part of the market because you're learning. But nevertheless, long story short, there's way too many people that I've seen, and it seems to be more all the time as web standards keep updating. Things are harder to keep up with. It's just harder and harder in general to be a web developer in terms of keeping up with everything. And the opportunities are too great outside of web development. So if you are good, you know, to where it's, I'm a PPC guy. I help people with their PPC campaigns. Half of your job as a person who has to maintain a website, and you're driving PPC to a website, is maintaining the website, keeping it updated, keeping it secure. And I see half the problems literally today that we have are regarding to or related or regarding the actual website itself. As funny as that seems, maintaining a website, that's the easy part. Well, for me, PPC is easy. The hard part is getting the client to maintain their website so it's 100% uptime all the time, 100% up or uptime all the time, so that the PPC campaigns can run without any, you know, problems. Anytime something needs to be done to the website, there's a whole what if that the people working on the website break something, and then the campaign goes in the crapper. A lot of times of which it's such a big mistake that the campaigns then end up losing many thousands of dollars, or the business goes completely under. For you people out there who, you know, run a brick and mortar business, or it's just to give you an equivalent of offline, because I always like to do that. People understand the offline. What if one day your business, your brick and mortar business, the roof collapsed and you couldn't reopen for 6 weeks because of the issues that were just there? A lot of your customer base would just go somewhere else. Unless it's like a hamburger shop, they'll come back, of course. But what if you're an accounting firm? They're just going to go find other clients, and then boom, you're just out of business. Game over. There's no second chances. So anyway, what I'm going to try to do in this video is highlight some of the horror stories that I've seen people do, so you kind of know what's up, what can happen to you that's going to cause something like that to you, to at the very least cost you way more than what it would have just cost to hire the right developer in the first place. But also to put you completely out of business, and being able to understand why that happens, and ultimately why it's important to really think through and invest a lot of time in deciding who you hire, how you're going to hire them, how you're going to manage the site. I get, you know, hiring somebody to manage your website, you're hiring a web programmer basically. Of course, there's people who manage the programmers too, but it's very highly technical, and like I said at the start of the video, the people who are in it, they have a lot of opportunities to, you know, everybody wants a good programmer, so therefore they're expensive. It's not like hiring hiring a plumber is expensive, but you already know hiring a plumber usually, that right there costs $100 an hour. Now you're now expecting to hire a web programmer for the same price? Logically, it doesn't make sense. Logically, that should be double or triple the price. And so people say, holy crap, $200-300 an hour to hire a programmer? I'm not doing it. Okay, well you're just gambling. People spend big money for insurance for the what ifs. In this particular situation, I'm going to show you basically it's not when, or sorry, it's not if, but when. The more changes you make to the site with an unideal situation of having the person you have that's not set up for success, to manage your site, the more chances something like this is going to happen, and this is going to be you, and you're just going to be a statistic. You're just going to be gone. You're going to say, dang, I wish I would have did something different. Well, this is your chance to know how to get out in front of it. And so I know people don't want to, like hiring a good tax planner. They don't want to believe, or hiring somebody to improve the security of their site is a better analogy for this one. They don't want to believe that it'll happen, so they don't have to pay. When it happens, that's the time that everybody should, ultimately step up and, help bail you out. But at the end of the day, that's your fault. If they can't get your site up quickly, the fault 95% lays on you from what stuff you could have done in advance, which this video is going to cover and explain what you could have done in advance to completely avoid this stuff. And when your site goes down, the reason why you go out of business is this stuff is not easy to fix, especially if, and with that, it's just like a failed marriage. Is it just one day, you get a divorce? It's a whole bunch of stuff that compounds on top of each other over time, which if you would have just stepped in and did something ahead of time, we all know people don't do stuff wrong sometimes, but the signs are there, and one could actually do something, and most of the time it's just because we're unwilling to, we're distracted, that kind of thing. And then eventually when it does fall apart, it's been a long time in the making. Well, this website stuff where eventually your site goes down, you can't get it up right away, and you've got salespeople to hire or pay, and you've got staff to pay, and there's no money coming in, and this is why it happens. And because things have been so built on a faulty structure for so long, due to all the misplaced changes you should have had that occurred when you went to have to update your site, there's just no returning from that. So anyway, I'm going to go over a short list of things here of kind of what you need to do. So this isn't actually you. You need to insure your business so that the foundation of your business, i.e. your website, stays up, so you never have this happen to you. Essentially, what I could recommend to you, what's the from an outsider's perspective, I don't do web design, the information you need to know to actually do this, because I've managed lots of websites, businesses I've ran, so on and so forth. You can take my advice so you can avoid all this stuff, and then of course I'm going to explain the stuff that I've seen, and this will put it into a frame of reference, what can happen, why it happens, and therefore how you're going to be able to completely avoid it. Some of this stuff is pretty funny, so I'll add a little bit of humor to what we're doing here, so it's not so morbid. It was just put it that way. Anyway, the first thing on my list here I want to cover is what compelled me to make this video in the first place. So there is some self-serving here. It's part of it is personal frustration through the clients that we have here. I have a PPC management firm, as I mentioned. Half of the problems we have here is from people who have an incapable person to help them manage their site, and then one day there's just this wild, crazy problem that happens, and then what do? And I'm not trying to talk myself up here, but we're not having problems. They understand we know things. We have to do things like landing pages, so we understand web stuff. We have to. But then their site goes down. Hey, Corey, what happens? What happened? What happened? And then you tell them, and then they want you to help them get their site up. Again, this is mostly your fault, because if you would have did the right things in the first place, of course you may not have known, so I'll give you that. But then now you're making it my problem to be able to get your site back up, because you're going to go out of business if you don't, and I understand that. So I want people to actually, at least some people out there, start to pass the word around about just stop making the same mistakes over and over again, so this just stops happening. The second thing is just to help, as I just mentioned, help people avoid the same thing happening to them. It doesn't have to happen to you. You may not get what you want, which is, I don't want to have to pay very much to have somebody help me manage my website. But a website's not a simple thing. It's way more complicated than building a house at the end of the day. And building a house is not complicated. I'm not saying that. So don't consider or think this is an easy thing to manage and do it the right way. And with that, just because somebody filled the hole on your site that you needed to fill them at that time, doesn't mean there's only one way to do it. There's only like 50,000 ways that hole could have been filled. Filling it the right way is going to have to get somebody with not only the knowledge, but also the incentive to actually want it to do the right way. And if you're not paying enough or some other problem occurs there, that person, even if they're capable, won't want to do it. Or that person may just tell you what you want to hear, just so that they can get your money. Then later on, they know you won't know a difference, and it's easy money for them. So I'm going to tell you how to spot that stuff. Anyway, the second thing on the list here to cover, why only good developers? So why only hire good developers, and what I have seen them do to actually destroy, completely flatten businesses. I.e. horror stories here. So here are the horror part where we get to the horror stories. So this is all things that I've seen. This is real stuff. A lot of it's happened more than once. I've dealt with hundreds of clients, so I've seen pretty much everything. And then also enough to where this is the top stuff where I've seen it more than once. It's so common. That's why I wanted to make this video, made this list as I did. Website hacks. So every time that, assuming that, so a house is not like a website, and that there isn't people constantly, criminals everywhere trying to break into your site. There's people trying to break into your site constantly. There's people out there that are just going out there trying to open your window. Oh, it's locked. Let's go to the next one. Oh, it's locked. And then eventually, okay, this one's open. We're going to come back tonight and raid everything. This stuff happens all the time. You got to be aware of this. Every time you have somebody do something to your site, and they don't know what they're doing, or care, or both, which is your two things that where you get screwed up, you're going to have a problem later on because there's now a security flaw in the site. That guy who's just coming to raid and steal anybody who's basically ignorant enough to let it happen, which, just put it that way, you were asking for it. Now you get your site, hacked. Your site's down for a couple weeks. You've lost about, 30 grand, all because you wanted to, instead of paying, $50 an hour, you paid $25 an hour to some guy who says that they can fix it for you. Got the money, learns on your dime, and then ultimately left you open for that. So the problem occurred before the actual hack happened. Second, can't respond. So these people can't respond quickly. So basically, something happens on your site, you can't respond quickly, and then the ads and or rankings tank. So they'll hire somebody. That person is so incompetent, which many people are. Let's say 10-20% of all the people I see people hire are so bad where they'll update something on the site and it breaks. It's not that easy to do if you're new to programming. And people charge according to, how much experience they have. There's no free lunch. Get what you pay for out there. And so the site will go down. They'll break it. If you don't get it up in 2 weeks, I can tell you right now, Google all the rankings you have, you're done. If you're relying, half your sales revenue is coming from just the organic, what do you think? Now what happens to your business? It's done. You only have a small error to screw up. Way less than you think. You think that the site goes down, oh, what's the difference? If it goes down, I didn't hire the right person, I'll just hire somebody else, and da-da-da-da-da. No. If it goes down too long, you're out of business. And that's why. Same thing for me, the ads. The ads on Google Ads or wherever you're running them is run on an ad algorithm that's trying to decide if they're supposed to run your ads or the competitors' ads in terms of making them money. Your site goes down for a while and your ads are shut off for a while, they're going to put somebody else in your place. So even when you turn the ads back on, it's going to be slow to uptake again. So you have that. And of course, again, if you need steady revenue coming in from those ads that you're counting on, and you have 2 weeks where the ads can't run, nobody could come in, you've got a problem as well. But the bigger one is the SEO. So change one thing on your site and then something else comes out in another place. I see this all the time as well. They hire that crappy programmer, web developer, however you want to name them. They will you ask them to change something on your site, add this or remove this. Sure, they do it. They say, I'm done, I want paid. You check it, okay, it's there. Something else on the site broke. Everything on your site is interlinked with everything else to a degree. It's not a hard and fast rule there, but there's a lot of times you could change one thing and then the programming code will then react and do something else somewhere else. And so you're thinking, okay, well, the guy just did what he was supposed to do here, therefore, nothing to worry about. Why do I have to pay a lot? He's cheap. He did it. You didn't see what happened over here. And it's there for 5 months before you see it again. And you've lost how much money? And when I say this, how much money, I've seen this happen tons of times where they directly block what is your whole site's there to do in the first place, which is a form, a web form where somebody enters their contact details. That form's broken for 3 months. Why is the leads down? I don't know. Everybody says. Meanwhile, the form doesn't even work anymore because of a small change one was trying to make 3 months ago, and that programmer, if they're cheap and they're inexperienced or don't give a crap, let's just say that more so, they make the change. They don't care what else the site did. They got their money, they're gone. Which is also why you got to use an actual reputable firm. Otherwise, they don't care. Long term, they don't care. Therefore, why are they going to do that? But also the shopping cart, if you have an e-commerce site, will get screwed up to where, and I've seen everything. I've literally seen, which you don't think it's possible, where some orders go through and others do not. So you're saying, oh, why is the sales down? Well, we're getting the orders, therefore it must be working. No. Some of the orders may be coming through, others haven't. And actually just dealt with something like that recently, and they lost $100,000 just from that before they figured it out. Next thing, overwrite landing page and tank ads and SEO results. So I'll have landing pages on their server, which is why I usually use a tool like Unbounce for landing pages now, because they'll hire an incompetent web developer, they'll update the site, or have a new site design that they roll out. That person isn't even smart enough to check if we have any landing pages on the site or anything. Or maybe sometimes it's the client's fault because they don't tell them that they're working with a PPC agency or anything like that. But the developer should be asking, are you working with a PPC agency? If I run that firm, I would be doing that. Well, anyway, they erase our landing pages, and then for 2-3 weeks our campaign's off because we got to ask them to restore it. And a lot of times they won't have any backup. So then you're out 6 weeks. And then when it's back up, again, the ads are slower. So that's happened 5-10 times already. It's very common. Next, sets up the developer for failure. It gets worse over time. Eventually, let's start over. So in other words, you have one programmer comes in, makes a change. Later on, a year later, you need somebody else to make a change. It's somebody else because usually freelancers, it's hard. They don't do the same thing for long term if you're hiring freelancers. With that, they make a change. It messes with the structural integrity of the site overall for the reasons I kind of mentioned before. Then later on, somebody else makes a change and it's even weaker. And the next change is even weaker, weaker, weaker. Eventually, it's so weak, it falls in a pile, and it's not going to be easy to get resolved again, especially since each person who makes a change, they don't do documentation. So even if you do have someone competent to come in to fix what you're doing, they can't quickly or at all, let's just say, because they don't know what the hell they did to the code. There's changes in the code. They don't know what that code does. You're supposed to put comments in the code that explains what it does. They don't do it because they don't care. They got their money. They're gone. They know you ain't going to know a difference, and they know whatever happens a year from now ain't their problem. Node redirect setup. So if you redesign your site, again, the average person redesigns their site every 3 years or so to keep it up to modern standards in terms of design looks and code and all that. But they'll have a bunch of pages, their subpages on their site going to certain URLs, and then the new site, the subpages that they have go to new URLs. And the programmer's so incompetent, they don't advise the client to redirect the old pages to the new. And then the rankings after 3 weeks of that go into the pile, the crap pile. That was half the revenue. They have all this overhead. they're out of business. I've also literally seen multiple businesses like that go out of business. A lot of times, by the time I see it, it's too late, but I said, the reason is you didn't redirect your old pages that you're new. 301 redirect is what you can look that up to see what that is, but it is absolutely insane that there's people out there that do the sites that do not know what that is yet. G, changing stuff too fast for SEO and ad purposes. So if you change stuff on a site, we're not using landing pages like on an e-commerce site. Whatever you change on that page, if it's fundamentally different, even if just the code's different but the design looks the same, that's going to screw with the ads. And so if you make a change and then later on you realize that's not the change you should have made, so you have to change it again. A lot of times the ad history that is getting you all the good results that you don't realize is coming from the history that Google has on the performance of your landing page gets reset. And so instead of getting an 8-to-1 return that took you 3 years to build up, now you're getting a 2-to-1 return. For SEO purposes, it's the same thing. Even if you redirected the person to the right page, as I kind of mentioned on this last one, the page fundamentally is totally different. And so if you change that page to where it's totally different, Google's got to assess the page, and if it's in terms of seeing what the bounce rates on the pages, due to Google's rank brain algorithm, they measure every page based upon, just like with the ads, if somebody goes to the page and they bounce back and they click on something else instead, it indicates that page should be ranked as higher. And so even if your page is technically better, gets higher conversion rates, you're going to have to go through a lot of times a 6 to 12 months process to prove to Google your page is better. And then your leads come down, and then the owner goes to argue with the marketing team. What's the problem? What's the problem? And then you tell them what the problem is, and then they don't want to believe it, and then they start making a bunch of other changes, and then that screws stuff up even more with the algorithm, both the SEO and the ad algorithm, and then it just spirals down, down, down. You're done. No checking on what they just did affected their conversion rate. So they do a new site. That web design firm doesn't understand conversion rate optimization, consumer psychology, colors, layouts, how all this stuff contributes to conversions. The client doesn't know it. They're expecting the person making the website, I guess, assumes they know it. The site looks good. The difference between somebody who can make a site look good versus one that can make it convert good, it's triple the price, just to let you know, roughly speaking. I'm trying to generalize so it makes it easier for you to understand here. But they do the new site, it doesn't convert as well, same thing. They go to the marketing team, what's the problem? The marketing team also usually doesn't want to blame it on the site, and even if you do blame it on the site, the client's not going to want to believe it. Again, the person's out of business before they realize it, and they don't want to. I've bought in on the process of buying this site from this firm. I don't want to believe that they screwed me over. I would rather tank my whole company because I don't want to believe I got scammed by the web development company. A lot of times they will eventually, have a come to Jesus moment, but it's 90 days after it's happened and it's too late. All your rankings are gone. Your ads don't perform when you get it switched back over, and you can't take a 90-day hit like that on revenue with your overhead the way it is and survive. So they were right away, and again, a lot of times they'll panic. What's wrong? Let's change this. Let's change that. And then each change successively causes even more pandemonium in what leads are coming in, because your rankings are going to change every time you make a change to your site. Same thing with your ads. Even if you're not changing where the ads get sent to, okay, more budget, less budget. Okay, let's try a different ad. And each one of those changes compounds the effect that you just did with switching things. A lot of times, even if you did the site right, it's going to take 90 days before your rankings and your ads perform the way that they were before, just as a heads up. So you also don't panic. Even if you did the right thing, hire the right firm, and they updated, listen to your marketing team and say, don't panic for 90 days. Don't force them to want to feel like if they don't make a change, they're going to get fired. All right, no backups in place. So it's still crazy to this day. The businesses I see, they have no backups of their site. To be safe, I'm making a backup every single day onto a server. and it's automatic, and it's in a place where I can restore it to the previous day's backup or any day's backup for up to 30 days in the past with the push of a button in 5 minutes, because stuff happens to a site. You don't want to, when something happens to your site, be struggling and fumbling around and all that. But that's the, assuming you have the backup, that's, of course, still going to put you only back behind 2 or 3 days. You have to find out who can restore it and then where the backup files or, whatever it is. But if you have no backup, you're going to have to rebuild those files. It's going to take you, 2 to 3 months to rebuild everything. Again, you're out of business. You can't, the traffic is going to be off. You're not going to have the leads coming in. When things do get fixed, it will still take another 90 days for whatever new settings you have to get stabilized in terms of running your ads and your SEO. So you need backups. You need to be able to know who can restore from backup, where those backups are at, and make it easy as possible to restore from backup, even if it costs you $50 a month to have a server that does nothing but saves the last 30 days of backups by day. And you actually need it daily because you don't know when there's a hack that changed something on your site, it got compromised, or when somebody made the change, you realize finally there's a problem, but that was 2 weeks ago when they did it. So you need to do day 15 and back up to day 15's snapshot or image of the server, and everything on that server gets backed up. A lot of people think that the web files is the only thing that needs backed up. You need the web files and you need the database. But more so, I would also recommend this whole server image so you can back up to literally 100% of exactly the settings that were on that server and exactly how the site was, no matter what was changed to it, and up to 30 days, so that whatever, if a 7-day restore didn't work, you can go to 14 days, and if that didn't work, so that also, on top of that, is the final thing I'll mention, so that if there's things added to your site, you've got people adding products to your site, in terms of keeping your site updated, that you don't have to do 30 days in the past and you've lost 30 days of results there. You want to go just far enough that as you need to not overwrite anything that you did recently, but also of course have the opportunity that if it was more than 7 days that the person made the mistake and you caught it, that you could still have a backup to where your site was clean, if you get my point there. And the last thing, overwrite your tracking. So for all our clients, everything we do is based on results. We usually don't get paid until we get so much results for the client up front. We're the only ones doing that out there in the PPC management space. But so with that, we got to set up tracking on every single project we work on. We'll set up the tracking. They'll have an incompetent person or firm working on the site, and they'll overwrite. When they do a new site, they'll overwrite all our tracking. Or that person will just take off the code because, what difference does it make? Oh, I want to set up code for my own thing over here. Oh, and they don't communicate with the client. And so our code will get overwritten a lot. And then when they overwrite the code, they delete the goals. And then there's incongruency in the data because they overwrit it. So even though if we can restore it, at the very least, there's a huge gap in the data, which then that data, when you're spending big money on ads, that data is worth gold because it tells you what not to do in the future. It's not about if you're going to get results, it's about running ads as far as running traffic at your site. We're going to talk about PPC ads here. It's not about when or if it's going to work. It's just a matter of spending enough money on it to see the 80% that doesn't work so you can weed it out and then be stuck with 20% that does work, and you need the data to do it. So literally half or more of what you're paying for like the first 2-3 years in business running the ads is about what did not work. And so if they overwrite that code, you basically tossed out at least half of the value of what you spent on the ads, because that's going to be able to take you to that 10-to-1 return on your ads that you're looking for long term. And which, by the way, the big guy in your space that spends the $100,000 a month, this is what he had to go through. He didn't turn on his ads day one and it worked. He went through this. Somebody explained this to him or her. They went through it. Now it's just like seeing someone that's famous for the first time. You don't see what they went through to get there. So that it's just it's a similar type of thing with running ads and being successful long term. So anyway, those are the things that can happen that can put you out of business. There's a whole bunch of things here, obviously, or close to it, close enough to it, or lose tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars. If you don't know how to code, then you need to be able to hire a quote-unquote reputable keyword reputable firm and put them on retainer, so that anytime you have a problem, you don't have to spend 2 weeks trying to hire a firm. You don't have that time. If you do that, there's no risk of a crisis, because they're going to be proactive about advising you on how to update your theme so it's current, stuff, security issues that are out there, patching them up before you have a problem with it, that kind of thing. They're going to be, of course, available so that if you do have a problem, within 24 hours you can respond. They know where those backups are of your site. They know how to restore it within 5 minutes, like I told you is possible. And they're not going to set up the next guy for failure. If the previous guy, if you keep using new people, the new people aren't going to know what the last people did, and you have no one to choke, basically. You want one person to choke, which is your person who manages the team at the firm. And you got to have a firm that's reputable. And a reputable firm, from what I found, you can disagree with me all you want, or stick your head in the sand all you want, but a good firm anymore is $200 an hour. And so you need them on retainer to maintain, not just respond when there's a problem, because you're going to have downtime if you do that. They need to be doing stuff every month to make sure everything's in tip-top condition. And yes, it costs a lot, but you're not going to go out of business, and you're not going to have that event where you lost 100 grand because there was something there you couldn't see. And it's easy to not see things when there's a mistake, especially if you don't know about programming and that person doesn't care anything about getting your money that handles it now. It's $100 an hour or greater if you're going to do a domestic from US freelancer, and it's at least $40 an hour for a foreign freelancer. Foreign freelancer, I'm going to recommend Eastern Europe. That's where most of the guys that I found do a good job are from, but it's at least $40 an hour. If you're going to have any chance at all of them not being people that are going to have a high chance of doing the stuff I just mentioned here for you. So you believe me, or take the risk. I would personally not want to take the risk, even though if there's a chance you could get it done cheaper. And the chances are high. The longer you go, as I mentioned, the more chance it is that you're going to have a problem. It's just like driving a car. The longer you drive it, the more chance you're going to have an accident. So you can get no insurance. What's going to happen when you eventually do get that accident, whether it's 20 years down the road, whatever, you're playing with fire. Freelancers will tell you what you want to hear, because it won't be till later till you figured it out. I mentioned that many times. The cheap freelancers, they don't have a lot of experience. They'll give you a cheap price, and there's certain 10, 20, 30, 50% of people who just want the cheapest. They'll get the business. They'll do a crap job. They'll leave. Even if there's not a problem right away, which a lot of times there will be, there'll be downtime just from what they did up front. Later on down the road, the new guy coming in won't know what that guy did, so when he makes his change, he won't know what the last guy did, and because that guy did something that made a vulnerability here, the change made here, normally this change would have been okay, but because this changes here, it's not done properly, the combination of the two made the site go down. Or it partially went down, and only part of the orders went through, or only part of the forms went through. I had an issue where somebody put a spam block filter on a form, and then, it filtered out the spam just like the client wanted, but it was 3 months where the forms weren't working. So what's that? A couple $100 grand or more worth of business? So that person was incompetent. Just as a side note, but there's all kinds of stuff. That person's not competent and they just want your money, and they're just trying, and they made it be just learning, so they don't even know any better. You can have all kinds of problems like that happen for you, and I've seen them all the time. And then, with the people the freelancers, a lot of times they don't know what they're doing. They'll quote a cheap price, and then they'll have somebody else cheaper doing it. They don't even know what they're doing. Then they hire somebody else who don't know what they're doing, who just wants money. And then they could get outsourced 3, 4, 5 times. What do you think the results are going to be from that? Same thing with cheap firms. If you hire a cheap firm that's $75 an hour, they're probably hiring cheap people because you can't make money hiring good people at that rate, or even 100 anymore. There's inflation. Or even if it's 125 or whatever an hour. I believe $200 an hour with inflation is where the rates should be. It was $100 an hour back in 2005. You can check on that if you want, but whereas normal rates of pay has not went up with inflation, people in the programming world, it has. So, you know, that just because you hired a cheap firm and they may have good reviews, they are hiring somebody cheap. And then so with that, you're kind of going to get the same result. But for the most part, those cheap firms are also getting the business because they're cheap. So you need a firm, as I mentioned, and you will have all these other benefits I mentioned by doing that. That's going to protect you. But you also got to have somebody with a name and a reputation to protect, basically. That's kind of common knowledge when you hire any firm. You're paying for the name, basically. And this is really no different. So anyway, that's all the kind of horror stories I've seen about in regards to site maintenance, upgrading sites. You got to do it, but you also don't have to do it in a risky way. You can. So anyway, hopefully I scared some sense into you, whatever, and let you know about the kind of things that could happen so you can avoid it. If you like this video, I have a lot of other actual PPC strategy videos on this channel where I talk about my 15 years of experience doing paid ads on Google and Facebook and so forth. So you could do those strategies for yourself, and they're good enough to where I can guarantee results for my client, so you should be able to know you can get results basically every time doing them for yourself. I also have a blog at guaranteedppc.com/blog where I give you step-by-step instructions on how to build campaigns that basically will guarantee your results there as well. But if you hired a web developer and I didn't quite put it in the frame of reference for you that you think it should have been or it makes sense, leave me a comment down below in the comment section. I always get back to everybody who leaves me a comment there. So anyway, I hope that it made some sense and put a frame of reference around what you are doing, or so you can turn a new foot or know when if you have a problem, the type of stuff that you need to do to recover from it and how serious it is. You don't wait too long, and again try to save money so that getting back up again isn't going to cost you too much, because again that you haven't seen nothing if you wait too long getting a site back up and the consequences of that. Hope you enjoyed the video.